so are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, fixing my hijab. It's just like, are you gonna keep wearing that? Do you wanna remove it? So I was just like, no, this is how I come, with like all this energy and confidence. And then the guy literally laughed. I was just like, guy, why are you laughing? He's just like, oh, we know you guys. Mnakuja hapa the first day, mmevaa hijab, kidogo like this, you're not wearing the hijab. I felt so offended. I'm just like, what do you mean? Welcome to Those Avoided Topics, the podcast where silence gets kicked out and real talk takes center stage. I'm your host, Ibtisam Habib, bold by nature, curious by design, and proudly poking holes in society's D&D science. Now, grab your cup of chai and let's dive right into it. All right, guys, I am excited, but also very nervous to come on here and share this story because I don't think it's something I've ever talked about on my platform. In fact, I realize a lot of people that follow me on my Instagram profile assume I create content for a living, which I keep saying, if that's what I do for a living, I'd really be failing because I just keep disappearing every now and then. But we're gathered here today to actually talk about my career and how it's been for the past 10 years that I've been in corporate life, right? And we'll take it like straight from the beginning where it actually started. In 2015, around January, February, I was still in university. I was in my last semester at UON. Kabete, comrades, wapi kelele. Now, at that point in time, we started applying for jobs. And we call ourselves team aggressive in Kabete. We started applying for jobs and a lot of people applied to many different places. But at that point, it came to my very clear understanding that as a Muslim, there were not very many places that I was actually willing to apply for. For example, some of the big companies that marketers would typically apply for would be like EABL, would be like BAT, which was not for me. So I was very clear. I wanted to apply to 2 FMCGs, Unilever and P&G. And so I went home. I applied for those. Fast forward a few months later, I actually got an opportunity to join both. At this point, I had a session with my mentor. We cried, decision was made. I joined Unilever, and that was the beginning of my journey in corporate. Now, the first thing I want to actually say here is the degree only just got me the opportunity to go in for the interview. What do I mean? I hadn't even graduated at the time. I graduated in December of 2015. I started working August 3rd, 2015. So literally just that when I went for the interview, I was just like, yeah, I'm graduating in December. But they already had like my transcripts. They knew how I was performing. And that got me the interview. Post that, purely it was what you brought to that interview, right? The confidence, how you responded to questions. So the first lesson I want to call out here is don't overthink, what I did in uni, The degree mostly in this type of industry. Of course, if you want to be a doctor, don't be going to study BCom and thinking you can be a surgeon, right? But if you're in this type of industry, the degree simply just gets you in that room. The rest is on you, right? As a Muslim woman, again, here's something that actually is really stood out for me. From day one in corporate, I had to be very clear on what I stood for, my values and my principles, because much later, I actually came to learn if you don't stand for nothing, if you don't stand for anything, you will actually fall for anything, right? Yani, it's so easy to get dragged into the corporate culture, and every corporate culture, I guess different ones have different cultures, but they'll have this habit and culture that just drags you in. So you need to stand for something. And I'll give you an example. The first day when I was in Unilever, we had this guy that was taking our photos to put it on, what are those things called? Those cards, those corporate cards, which I never actually used. I don't know what those were for. So he was taking our photos. And this guy comes to me. There's quite a few of us who were like starting on the same day. So this guy comes to me and is just like, so are you ready? And I'm like, yeah, fixing my hijab. He's just like, are you gonna keep wearing that? Do you want to remove it? So I was just like, no, this is how I come, with like all this energy and confidence. And then the guy literally laughed. I was just like, guy, why are you laughing? He's just like, oh, we know you guys. Mnakuja hapa the first day, mmevaa hijab, kidogo like this, you're not wearing the hijab. I felt so offended. I'm just like, what do you mean? And I didn't understand him. I'm like, what? Like, why would you even say that to me? But fast forward, when I actually got into that organization, I actually met women who had joined as a hijabi, but then the culture like sort of just transforms you into somebody else, and they had removed their hijab. And that's where the guy was coming from. You're like, mbona unajisumbua unavunga hii kitu na utavua tu in the near future. So for me, starting off with that realization that, okay, if you don't stand for something, you will lose yourself in the journey. So that's one of the things. For me, I was very clear. I was intending to be a hijabi girl. Now, the other thing that for me was really clear is that I did not want to shake hands with men, which is something I hadn't done in campus. I had stayed strong in it. And please note, I went to UAN. We were in a class of over 300 people. I was the only Muslim girl and the only Arab looking one. So at some point, stories were like, oh, is she racist? Is that why she's not shaking our hands? Is it because we are black? There's all this conversation. And then luckily, because the women spoke for me, they're like, yeah, that she just doesn't shake hands with the guys. So when I went when I started corporate, it was very clear for me, I didn't want to do that. It is part of my religion and I wanted to stay strong in it. However, that tested me from the beginning to the very end. And I'm a very extroverted person. So you can imagine I would go into the office, I start saying hi to everyone, and everyone just comes with hand forward to start shaking your hand. So that continued being an issue for many people until, well, if you worked in the office with me, you'll get used to it. But every time we had a guest, I still remember in 2024, just last year, the beginning of last year, we had like our CEO, like top guy from Global who came into the country. And then I was supposed to show him Carrefour Mega, like how our aisles look like, how the category is performing. So this guy, I can see him walking towards me, right? Because I was supposed to show him that category. And I literally stand like this. I'm like, please don't shake my hand. Please don't come with your hand. And then the moment he comes close to me, he's just like, hi. I was just like, apologies, I don't shake hands. Like, let me tell you, I think I spoke to that guy for like 10 minutes in that aisle. I don't think he had a word I said. And I kept telling my boss after, I'm like, either he was in his head thinking, who does this small girl think she is to refuse to shake my hand? Or he was just like, oh my God, I should have figured these people don't shake hands. I don't know which one it is. I wish I could get a chance to just ask him what was going in through your mind. But it was just awkward the whole time. But that's part of something that, especially for people who are like minority, not a lot of people have encountered such people who don't shake hands. And a lot of Muslim women also shake hands, right? So it's not a common thing. You'll need to like really stand on your feet and be like, this is me. And that's my version. Like mine is not shaking hands. I don't know what yours is, but you need to figure out what that is. And you stand strong on that from the beginning. I know that was my first year. When I joined again, I quickly realized I didn't know anything. And I was a typical A student, first class honors. I thought I would get into corporate and just be a star employee. That didn't happen. I didn't know anything. And that was hard for a character, personality like mine who thought I had it all figured out. I didn't. What I learned really quickly is you need to ask for help, and it's okay. And when you're Miss Independent, I'm that type. Every time we used to go for karaoke, my song used to be Miss Independent. If you're Miss Independent, you quickly have to humble yourself and realize Missy Jui, and it's okay to ask for help. And of course, you will meet people who are not willing to help. Not everyone has that teacher in them. But you will also meet people who enjoy teaching. So keep asking for help. In fact, shout out to Shiko and Jonjo, because literally I'd wake up every day, sit next to Shiko and be like, so what are you doing today? And literally just shadow her the whole day so that I can understand what on earth is marketing for a big corporate like this, right? So for me, just remember, calm down, humble yourself. It's okay to not know what you're doing, but ask for help, right? And while we're talking about asking for help, also for me, networking was so important. Okay, for me, it's part of my character, right? Like again, I'm an extroverted person, but also I realized sometimes in corporate, people are bound to only try to network with people in senior positions. You don't talk to people who are much junior than you. You don't talk to the janitor. You don't talk because you feel the only people who can help you in that journey is someone senior to you. And that is such BS, if you ask me, because there's something to learn from everyone. when I start talking about again my journey, right? When I started off, I was an assistant brand manager, specifically for a brand called Lifebuoy. I know so many of you don't even know the brand because it ceased to exist, but that's the brand that I was working for. Now, I did that for like a year and a half, and then I got posted to Kilifi. Now, when I got posted to Kilifi, I was supposed to be basically a salesman. We call it a territory manager, but I was basically a salesman. What I did is I used to follow people, our sales team, to like the kiosks, the wholesale, to see how they're selling, how they're doing, what we can learn from it. Now, I still remember my extended family feeling so sorry for me, like woye, hiyo ndo kazi unafanya. And I remember the narrative of like, what, like she must be so broke to be doing that. And that's something I learned over the journey. Let people believe you're broke. Imagine, first it's good just for hasad, like, but also there's no black tax because that family never reached out to me to ask for money. My brother, on the other hand, has received the other end of this deal because they just assume this guy has a good job. We'll call him Mimi. Maskini Ibtin. May Allah give her a good job. And at that point, please note, I was living in Kilifi by the beach and I was being paid for hardship allowance because apparently Kilifi is a hardship location. Me, I was living my best life. By 3 p.m., mi nilikuwa beach. But the narrative was, woye, hii ndio kazi anafanya. So something also that I've learned is it's okay. You don't need to prove to people that you're doing well in life, you know. And honestly, at this point, it was my second role at Unilever. And I didn't mention that actually when I joined Unilever, I joined as a management trainee, right? Which meant ideal scenario, I needed to work in that field for 3 years and hopefully graduate into a manager position. So this was my second stint in the management training program. And in fact, it was in this stint where I made my first million. I still remember sitting down with one of my photographer friends and be like, oh my God, I actually made $1 million. And this was like bonus month, etc. But I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I made my first million. And I still remember talking to him and telling him, people still think I'm so broken. I love that for me. In fact, I think I ran with it so much to date. I still call myself the broke girl because I'm like, you know what? I like it when people just always assume you're going through the worst. And people ask you, how is it going? You're like, yeah, alhamdulillah. Tuendelea, there's no need to be like, oh my God, I'm winning in life. Like, there's no need to rub with people the wrong way, right? So that was my Kilifi stint. I did that for like about 6 months and then I came back to Nairobi. When I came back to Nairobi, I came back to a time where I was supposed to ideally go through my next stint, but I wasn't ready. There's so much going on. So I remember just sitting there and not having not having much going on for me. And I was so bored. And at this point, I remember learning how there's different leaderships. There are different leaders in the organization. At that time, the GM that we had was so amazing. I literally remember you would go present to him. Shout out to Justin. You got to present to Justin and you think you have, everything ready. But then you'll go see him and he'll always ask you a question and you'll be like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that, Like it was always so empowering. Fast forward later, I worked with leaders who literally you would go present and they would question everything, but in a way that will just make you feel stupid, Justin will question you in a way, be like, like you've taught me something. So in that journey, I started learning how the different leadership styles that exist in this world. And in that journey, also try to learn who do I want to be like and who don't I want to be like, you know what I mean? So anyway, at this point in time, when I came back, there wasn't much to do. I reached out to Justin and he had this really open door, anyone can come talk to me type of character. I remember going to him and be like, there's nothing much I'm doing. I need something that will challenge me. Da, 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 da. And subhanallah, in a few weeks, he had gotten me an opportunity to work it's like a shopper promotion type of role for Sunlight. So I did that again, which was now my third stint as a management trainee at the time. I did that for 6 months. And while I was doing that, an opportunity came. it was always a reminder when I was working for Lifeboat, and while Lifeboat at that time was not even doing so well anymore, I had met colleagues from different parts of the world when they were coming into the country to make sure we're launching the brand. So I remember bumping into them, and I had actually told them, like, so in just our conversations in the networking that I was mentioning, I told them, like, I'd want to do a stint outside the country to just learn more, get exposure outside the country, etc. I remember this guy reaching out to me and be like, Ibti, are you willing to travel? And as a single babe, no responsibilities, I was just like, absolutely. He's like, there's an opportunity in Singapore. I'm like, sign me up, which is something I would say. If you're single, like no responsibilities around, and you get an opportunity to leave the country, honestly, take it. There's so much to learn when you're like away from your comfort zone. There is so much out there for us to see. And this is also for those who are like, married with children. If opportunities still come later on, by all means, and you can somehow figure it out, do it. But it's a lot easier when you're single, right? So this guy reaches out and is like, "Is an opportunity in Singapore?" I'm like, "Singapore? Sign me up. Sounds like a holiday." So we start this conversation. Eventually, it turns out the Singapore one didn't work out, but the opportunity was in India. Now, for those who know me, my stepdad's Indian. So we'd been to India before, but like for holiday. And it seemed like it was good vibes, right? So when he said India, I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And I understand a little bit of Hindi. I don't know whether it's because of my stepdad or just us Caucasians watch too many Bollywood movies, but that's besides the point. So the opportunity to go to India came up, and that was officially now supposed to be my last year as a management trainee. After that, you either graduate into, becoming a manager, or you're told you haven't like fully, you're not fully ready to be there. So you add more stints to it, or you are literally dropped off the program, depending on how you perform, right? So the intention was, as I go to India, when I tried to learn the full holistic marketing view, I was supposed to go to India to understand how they develop assets. Because at the time in Kenya, mostly we would get, for example, a TV asset and be told, we just execute, we air it. We don't actually produce the TV asset. So I went to India to like learn that bit, so that at that point in time when I came back, I had learned holistically what marketing is, and I could therefore graduate. Now, let me tell you guys, when I went to India, depression o'clock. That was a shock to me. As I said, I had been to India before, severally actually. I understood a good chunk of the language, but when I went there, I realized, first of all, the Unilever office there is a whole campus. There's over 2,000 employees. It's humongous. And in there, I was known as the African girl. Oh, like, yeah, that girl from Africa. And it was so weird. And because, so people will be like, so you're the girl from Africa. Yeah, but why aren't you black? It's just like, really? We're having these conversations in 2018. I'd left, like, and please note, in India, I was an expatriate. I was living at JW Marriott. Let me tell you, JW Marriott is beautiful. I had a full-time driver, like literally, Mr. Salman. There's a blog post somewhere I wrote about this. I had a driver just outside, just chilling, waiting to drop me wherever I want. Like from the outside looking in, like it was a dream. Like it was supposed to be beautiful. JW Marriott had like a full-time swimming pool out there. There's a gym which I never went to. But it was supposed to be this beautiful experience. And I couldn't tell people back home, like, oh my God, guys, I'm really struggling. Because like, what, surely how are you struggling when you're supposed to be living your best life as an expatriate? But I'd go to the office in the morning. The culture was so different. I remember once leaving the office at 6 p.m. Please note, here in Kenya, 5:30, I've clocked my 8 hours. I'd be out. I remember leaving at 6 p.m. one day. Actually, it was after Maghrib, like 6 something. And I bump into this guy, and then it's just like, oh, Ibti, half day today. And I just like, sorry, what? There's this expectation that you work until you stay, not you work, you stay in the office until 10 p.m. because there's so many people in the country, you're so easily replaceable. And for me, I'm just like, you want me to just stay just so I can look like I'm working? That was wild. But also, the people just like they worked in their own silos. Like if you didn't talk to them, they don't talk to you because they have their own lives going on, right? And so like, I learned quickly. So in fact, 3-4 weeks later, they had a bank holiday or some holiday, and it was supposed to be like a long weekend. At that point, honestly, I'd felt so sad, which is such a weird thing for me because I don't think I'd ever gone through like that low moment in my life. I was just always like, yeah, I'm safe. I remember waking up in the morning. I had a friend who was in Malaysia. I woke up in the morning, I booked a flight to Malaysia, and I was just like, you know what? I'm out of here. I booked a flight for that evening. And I remember being, and I didn't tell anyone. I remember being at the airport and then remembering Malaysian Airlines is the flight that had gone missing twice in the class. And I was just like, woo, nikipotea, someone at home needs to know like what happened to me. So I texted my brother and was like, I'm going to Malaysia for some work. And then it's just like, oh, okay. It was weird because surely like I just arrived in India, right? So I went to Malaysia. I just woosad. I started like thinking, okay, like how do I get back there to make sure that this India experience doesn't just the year doesn't just flow with just me being a depressed girly. Took that weekend out, chill, went retail therapy, Malaysia, it was nice. Da, da, da. Went back. Please note, Kenyans don't need a visa to Malaysia, so that's why it was so easy. I could travel the same day. But also Indian, like all that Asia traveling is so cheap, so that's why I could also do it just really quickly. So I get back to Mumbai after. Please note, the moment you get into Mumbai as a Muslim girlie as well, it's just like, where are you from? Like, is it Pakistan? Like your passport goes like there's also that. Like the India Pakistan thing is a thing. So in Muslims are also not necessarily like loved there. So the moment you get in, you have to like, okay, Ibti, it's okay. It's okay. Which is part of why when I came back to Kenya after that, I was so grateful. I'm just like, Kenya is one of those countries you can be whoever and no one cares. You can be white, black, purple, yellow. You can be Muslim, atheist, Christian. No one cares. It's not like that out there. And that probably why I'm like, you know what? I am so proudly Kenyan. That's a story for another day. So I get back to India and I decide, you know what? I'm starting afresh. I go back to the office the next week and I'm now actively reaching out to people. I'm like, hi, so I'm Ibtisam. I come from Kenya. Oh, really? Like, so, why are you not, how are you not black? Like, where are you really, really from, So when those questions were being asked at the beginning, I was feeling offended. But as I stayed, I realized these guys had never met a Kenyan before. Because while I was there, I was meeting like 6. I was meeting people that in their culture, for as long as they lived, they were never allowed to cut their hair. So even I learned I was also ignorant. Of course, I learned how to ask the question so that I don't make the other person feel offended. But for me, it was just like, you know what, Ibti? Take the question as entertainment. And that's why I kept reminding myself everything is content. You just let them ask you, let them be the silly ones. You just respond. They're like, so you shower with that on your head. I'm like, yeah, my hair doesn't need, there's even shampoos that we use just specifically for our hijabs. So it was just now at this point, I was just like, you know what? Just enjoy the journey. While at least if you find someone who asks genuinely, respond genuinely. Because literally the questions of, oh, you be like, someone be like, so where are you from? Kenya? Where's that? East Africa. Oh, it's at the equator. And you're like, yeah. It's like, but then the sun is like right overhead. Like, shouldn't you have tanned? And I'm like, you started off really well, but then you just realize, you know what? It's okay. The narrative of we have lion for pets, it's fine. So I took that in and just like, you know what? We'll go with it. It will be content. It will be funny. With time, I started actually making friends. So interesting because I remember by the time I was leaving India at my farewell party, we cried. I was just like, who would have thought I would love you guys? Because the beginning was rocky. But what I learned in that journey is it's also on you to be the one that reaches out. Don't expect for people to be the one that welcome you. Because in fact, as soon as I came back from India, I remember we had an expatriate in Kenya. I think he was from the Netherlands. And no one used to talk to him. It was just a white guy seated in the corner in the Nairobi office, that is. And I remember feeling for him. And actually, I was not actively trying to be the one that actually talks to him, because I was now thinking in retrospect, when you're the newbie, people expect you to be the one that reaches out. But if it's not in your character, for example, for me, it was, I don't know, I didn't think I needed to. But if you're just an introvert, you would really just go cuckoos, because you're not talking to anyone, you're in a new environment, all these things. But anyway, so while I was in Mumbai, eventually I made friends. In fact, to date, we still have a WhatsApp group with some of the friends that I made in India. This is 2018. It was such a good time. I also quickly learned that when they were told there was a girl coming in from Africa, they knew the girl didn't know anything. There was nothing they were going to learn from me. And so they never bothered. Luckily, along that journey, while I was there, I was working on a whole different project, but I found them working on this influencer strategy. At the time, influencership was such a new thing. Like influencer in the marketing field was such a new thing. And it really helped because I was an influencer back at home. So I used to just raise my hand up and like try to share my knowledge. And that really helped, like, for them to see some value in what I brought to the table. And whether you like it or not, at some point in corporate, everyone is busy and people will want to see what it is that you bring to the table. So when you have anything to bring to the table, just say it. Now, when I was in India, there's a guy I remember when I used to try and ask him things, he'll be like, yeah, I'll show you late. He'll always just like brush me off, right? He was senior than I was, an assistant brand manager. He was like a mid-level manager. So I was just like, you know what? It's fine. This guy is never going to help you. But I had learned also there's people who will help and there's people who just don't have it in them to help, right? Now, fast forward, I finished my stint in India. Luckily for me, just before I finished the stint, my leadership team from Kenya were coming to visit India for some of their own work. When they do come, they manage to meet my boss in India. They have this conversation. My boss is very happy. Before I even come back, they're like, "Congratulations, Ipti. It looks like you're graduating." So I finish off my 3 years of management trainee and I actually get a graduation into a manager, which was amazing because not everyone actually, like, the transition wasn't just as smooth usually. Now came the part where I become a manager. And whew, I don't think I knew what it meant, to be honest, in my mind, because all I knew is more money, right? Like growth in your career. What I didn't realize that now you had people that needed to do the work for you and you needed to inspire them to do it, or you both look down. Now, I came back end of 2018. So now that's 2019, my first stint as a manager. I don't even know who I am as a manager. I'm always used to be the one that does the job, hands it over to my manager, and then they take it up, right? Now, at this point, I need to get someone to do it with me and at the right time. And my character was always bias for action. Like, I want to do it quickly, send it to my boss. I think you'd actually call me a teacher's pet in that scenario, right? I become a manager and I become a really bad manager. I don't know how to figure this out. In fact, I remember one of the first people. So soon after, because I became a manager in 2019, I work on the brand Omo. But in fact, what I remember very well is in 2020, in COVID, I got a reportee who was an introvert. I had never met him because it was the COVID time. I had never met him in person. He was initially in sales. He was just brought in. He was a management trainee as well. He was just brought into the office and he was supposed to report into me. I literally remember at the very end apologizing to this guy because I learned in that journey, I didn't know who Ibtisam as a manager was. I didn't know what leadership style like I had. I really didn't know when the person wouldn't deliver the stuff on time, I would do it myself. I'm like, this it's gotta be done. I was a terrible manager. Let me just say it upfront, like, oof, to everyone I managed in that point. I am sorry once again. And I already apologized, but I'm gonna apologize again. I learned when I finally sat down with myself to think about it. I actually remembered my very first role when I was a Lifeboy manager, right? I was a Lifeboy assistant brand manager. Um, my boss at the time, we were three of us that were reporting into him. Myself, fresh from campus, and then two other ladies who were much senior than I was. Now, because I was fresh from campus, I really appreciated someone who would micromanage me because I didn't know what I was doing. So tell me, Ibti, I need this done. I need you to send it to me by Wednesday. Do it in PowerPoint, like tell me exactly how you want it, and I'll deliver it on Wednesday. Whereas the senior ladies didn't appreciate that because they knew what they were doing. They didn't want you to keep checking. So literally on Tuesday, the guy would come and check, Ibti, how's it going? I'd be like, yeah, it's going like this. Is it okay? I was thriving because I was fresh. The other ladies hated it because they're like, why is our boss always on our case? And when I was thinking about it, I was just like, when you're a manager, you really need to know not just your leadership style, but also who are you managing? Some people would appreciate micromanagement depending on what level of their career they're at. Some people would absolutely hate it. So you can't just choose, I'll be like hands off. I'll leave you alone and assume it will work for everyone. Different people have different ways of learning. So sadly, the person who got me in 2020 didn't get that version of me because I was just like, this guy is not talking. He's not telling me he's not done this stuff. He did not telling me that he doesn't know how to do this stuff. But also, I didn't even know this guy. I didn't even take the time to understand like how does he learn? Does he learn better through me teaching him, or does he learn better through him, like me sending him links? I learned the hard way. The next person I got to manage was the one that actually at least she got me when I had a much clearer mind, right? And she was also an introvert. And I remember like going out with her and be like, okay, what's your style? Like, how do you learn best? Do you want me to like set up time to teach you myself? Do you want me to send you links for you to read? Like literally asking her what works for her. I remember even one lady, I remember asking her like, is it best for me to call you when I need something, or is it best for me to text you? Gen Z's really taught me here, and I claim to identify as one, but I remember her telling me, Ipti, if you call me, you give me anxiety. I'm like, sorry, what? Like, I might be calling to just check in on you. She's just like, I just text me. Need anything from me? Text me. And I'm like, and you will reply. And she's just like, yeah. Just, even my mother doesn't call me. I was just like, oh, okay. And so with that journey, I started learning on who I was as a manager. Very humbling experience again, because again, as I mentioned, I'm your A student, but I wasn't acing this life at that point in time. So the work was getting done. Sadly, though, at the beginning, I was the one doing it and not my team doing it, which means I was failing them. But fast forward, I started learning on like who I was as a manager, how to treat the different people in the styles that works for them. And at this point in time, please note, I was still not shaking hands. It was still bothering a lot of people. But we were moving, such is corporate life. Now, when I became a manager, in fact, something I forgot to mention earlier on, don't try to do these things, don't try to cooperate without having a mentor. I think it's so important to have someone who's been through that journey to simply there's things that you can't see when you're in the space, but someone's gone through it, and there's no need for you to learn from your own mistakes. Sometimes you can learn from other people's mistakes. I remember one time my mentor telling me, Ibti, you will only grow in corporate via merit until a certain point. After that, it's not just merit that will grow you. And I used to think, what rubbish is that? Like, if I am bright, that's all that needs to matter. But at some point now, once I became a manager, is when I learned that is not really the case. Whether you want to agree, accept, reject, whether you're seeing it or not, there will always be office politics in your corporate. And if you're not seeing it, you're probably being part of the person that's being played. So one way or the other, you're going to have to open your eyes and see what's happening. So how you play it is on you. Whether you're the person who just have hard conversations, whether you're the person who wants to go to Karura to run with people that you don't even like. Well, there's many ways to do this thing, but you'll realize you'll be seeing people growing, and you're like, Okay. Last I checked, their brand was not performing well. How did they get there? But that's corporate, and they might be brilliant people, but surely merit is based on if your brand is growing or not, right? You'll learn sooner or later there's more to it than just merit, right? I learned later because when my mentor was telling me, just like, I've grown through merit. And it's just like, yeah, you will grow through merit until a certain point where you need to open your eyes and be like, it has to be more than that. And that was a very humbling experience, but you live and you learn, right? Something else that also I remember learning is I used to think as long as my boss knows what I'm doing, right? That's good enough because they will go into the boardrooms and they will speak for me. What I learned when I became a manager is it's not enough what I think of my team. What the rest of the room thinks of my team is also important. So we'll go into a boardroom and we're discussing people, like how are they performing, how da da da. And I'll be like, yeah, so my team did this. Great delivery, fantastic. And then someone else will be like, yeah, however, when we asked them to do XYZ, they didn't even do it. They did it. And I'm like, but that's not their main goals in this organization. But somehow, how other people perceive you show how good of a leader you are. Because it's one thing, again, I remember very clear having this conversation. It's one thing if you're just good at what you do, then stay in the role that you're playing now to forever. But can you lead? Can you do this? Do you have the softer skills? Do you have and these things a lot of times it's the other people in the boardroom that can actually also speak for you in regards to saying, how are their standards of leadership? How good are they when they're given an opportunity to run with something new? And so that's also something that was always interesting for me. We used to use this word visibility that we hated in that office. You're like, are you visible? Does everyone know? I'm like, why should people know what it is I'm doing? As long as my boss knows, as long as my results, guys, whether you accept it or not, you've got to be visible. People need to know what it is that Ibtisam is doing in that office. In fact, when people know when you're getting these promotions and whatnot, people are not now questioning, why did she get that opportunity? Because they know what it is that you're doing, right? So that was my life as a manager. So I first started off being an Omo marketing manager, and then after 3 years, I became a Sunlight marketing manager. And I know a lot of people be like, aren't those two the same things? And a lot of people don't even know that they're from the same organization. So Sunlight's a much bigger portfolio. In fact, the biggest brand that we had in the country. So I became a Sunlight marketing manager, and I remember at a time while I was a Sunlight marketing manager, I went on maternity leave. This time, I also had like my mentor had to sit me down and remind me like, Ibti, you deserve the leave because there's so much pressure and people are like, you know what, you might go on maternity leave and come back and not get that job because surely it's 4 months because our mat leave was 4 months. That's 4 months of you being around. What if they get someone else? So because of that fear, then we go on mat leave and carry our laptops. We're here nursing a child, but we're here trying to get the work done, right? So for me, the reminder was if that happens, they weren't valuing you. They didn't see your value in the organization. So when you're on mat leave, take that leave. Your mental wellness really actually matters because you will crash. If you don't take, in fact, leave mat leave alone. Just your annual leave. Sometimes you try so hard to prove to the organization that, I'm your person. Even when I'm on leave, I'm in Hawaii, you can call me. Guys, if you can, because I know there's toxic environments that don't allow you to do so, but if you can, take those leave days. Even when you're sick, take your sick leave. Because honestly, if you are to drop dead today, may you have a long life, the organization will move on so quickly. Before you're buried, they'll probably have announced on LinkedIn that there's a role opened up. So take your you time seriously. So when I was on mat leave, I just shut that laptop and said, I'll see you guys in 4 months. And I left. When I came back after 4, I remember even my husband telling me, "Hey, Ipti, like, are you sure about this? Like, you don't want to like check in I'm like, I barely have time to check in on myself. There's a child crying, needing me the whole time. But I remember going back after 4 months, and that's something I'll give credit to the organization that was really kind. Went back after 4 months. They were kind. It was very flexible. They had room for mothers. They even have like a pumping nursing room that you can go to. So that was amazing. But I just remember something that I'd forgotten to mention at the beginning when I was talking about having the values. I remember at the very beginning we had a session with like the directors at the time, and they were asking us, like, how do you find the company so far? What do you like and what don't you like? I remember people are like saying like really serious stuff, feel like the field is like this. I remember the one thing that was really bothering me that is that every time I wanted to go pray, I needed to find like an empty meeting room so that I can go pray at lunchtime. So I remember just saying, guys, I'm so sorry, but mine's gonna be a little bit weird. I really struggle to pray. Like, and again, I was the only practicing Muslim in the office, so they hadn't experienced this before. I remember telling the MD at the time, his name was Mark. I was like, Mark, I don't have a place to pray. So every time it's 1 o'clock, I'm just wasting time going around places looking for a place to pray, being weird about it because like going up and down, like, what's this girl doing? And I remember literally this man, a few months later, we were renovating offices and moving, and he actually created a prayer room for me. And this was a reminder to myself that honestly, sometimes all we need to do is ask. Granted, the answer sometimes can be no, but so what? Yani, that's the worst that can happen. Like I did ask for a bidet, like shatafa in the washroom. That never happened. But it's fine. I got the prayer room. In fact, I hope there's still a prayer room, but I don't know if there's a Muslim right now there to pray. But I got the prayer room. So one of those things where sometimes just ask. The answer might be no. It's chill. Sometimes the answer might be okay. Makes sense. Because I remember that guy telling me, oh my, I've never thought about it because we've not had a Muslim who wanted to pray. And I just like, oh, of course that makes sense. That's why you don't have a prayer room. Like it was so simple. And also on the same regards to values, I remember making it very clear at the beginning that guys, I don't take meetings at 1. And it's very hard to say this when you're new. You're like, you're new here. Why are you coming in with conditions? But it had to be very clear for me, like, guys, at 1 p.m. I go to pray. I cannot have a meeting at 1. And I stayed true to that to the very end. Even when I was on my prayers and I wasn't praying, I'm like, no, guys, I don't want to confuse you this 1 week and you think now I can have meetings at 1. I still don't have meetings at 1. So especially for the Muslim babes watching this, I know it's hard to speak up like that, especially when you're like a minority and like people don't get it. But imagine just voice it out. People will be uncomfortable at the beginning, but eventually they'll flow with it and they'll have to, right? As long as, and I keep saying, as long as you are in the organization doing what you're supposed to do, you're acing the rest of the stuff. These other things are such kidogo matters. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Now, fast forward again, as I was mentioning, as now a Sunlight marketing manager, so senior marketing manager at this point in time. And my boss at the time was an expatriate. So I knew his time was running out, and it was about time his stint in Kenya was about to end. And I'd been working under him for 3 years. So the opportunity for becoming a director was opening up. I'd had rumors in the office on who that role might go to, and it was very wild to me. I just like, sorry, but like, you seeing me? Because I'm just like, I feel like the natural fit. Of course, it sounded like an entitlement at this point in time, but I was just like, if these rumors are true, that would be very wild. So I remember, so when we're saying about, learn the politics for yourself, for me, my superpower was to have hard conversations. So I remember going to the HR director and be like, okay, so I recognize there's an opportunity that's opening up. I would like to interview for it when it's ready. And he was very, like, I caught him very off guard. He's just like, okay. I'm like, yeah, so I want to apply for the role. And if I don't get it, that's cool. I would just want to know, like, why I didn't get it so that I can work on it. So that the next time an opportunity to be a director opens up, I'd have worked on whatever skill gap that I have. He's just like, okay, we'll let you know when the time comes. I was just like, yeah, Sure. A few weeks later, I get a call and I'm told, congratulations, Ipti. If you would accept the offer, you would officially be the marketing director. That was very well, because I expected to be like to go for like an interview and whatnot. But somehow, and I still to date don't know what happened behind the scenes, whether it was my performance, I don't know. But I got the role. And at this point, I was 33 years old. So the youngest director in the company, and I was thrilled. But let me tell you something about imposter syndrome. I don't know if men go through this. Kanini, I'll ask you later if you go through imposter syndrome. But I know women, we have this thing where, and I always give it examples of, there'll be a role to apply for that says, it needs 5 years of experience. A woman with 4 years, 11 months will be like, I don't qualify. A chap with 2 years will be like, you know what? Let me go for it. I don't know what happens with I don't know. I remember when I got it, I was just like, did I deserve this? And I'm like, Ipti, there wasn't even an interview. You were appointed this, like, but there's a part of my mind that was just saying, but did you deserve it? And at that point in time, the category that I was supposed to now lead as a director had been declining for the past 3 years. So the pressure had increased. I needed to prove to myself first, because again, I was doubting myself if I really did deserve it, or it's just my mdomo that got me there. But also the rumors that I had initially in the office that, so and so is the one who was getting this role. I remember so and so actually coming to me and telling me, Ipti, how did you get this role? And I was just like, I'm assuming by merit, and I could tell it had bothered him. And I'm assuming, because again, to date, I have no proof to show otherwise, but I'm assuming indeed there were promises that had been made to guarantee so and so the role. So to me, it was also very weird that we didn't interview for it, because that's what I had gone to ask for, right? But we were there. So when I got the role, I took some time out. I went to the coast, went home, yani Ushago, let it marinate, celebrated myself, da, 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 da. But then went back to reminding myself, remember how when you were a manager, you really sucked at it, right? You're already into getting into this ship that's sinking. It's been declining for 3 years. You've got to get and just go running, right? So I actually brought the whole team to the coast. And when you're a marketing director in the organization, you typically don't just lead your marketing team. You did like the whole business group. So like your supply chain members, your finance team. Da, 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 da. Remember calling them and be like, guys, what are your fears? Like, what are you thinking? Da, da, da. Like, just to get to know where they stand. And honestly, sometimes it's the most littlest of things. I remember it coming out that we wanted to know, Ipti, we've never been led by a Muslim before. Does this mean we will not be drinking anymore? And I just like, oh, it's literally the tiniest of things. And so we had these conversations, and we got to getting to the root of the matter. And we started off this journey as Ibtisam, the youngest marketing director, and with a lot of pride and joy in it. I want to be the first one to announce it right here that by the end of that year, the category had turned around and it was growing, positive growth with positive profit at the very end, which is something that the category hadn't done for 3 years. So please, pause kidogo, piga makofi. Imposter syndrome ilimalizwa. So it was a proud moment. However, it was also in that year when the company was restructuring, and I realized, I think I'm done. And this is a lesson that I want to say. When in your soul, you know it's over, it's over. Don't push it. Don't let your mind do the. And don't feel the fear that, oh my God, I'm over 30. How do I go start afresh? I had been in that organization. This is now my 10th year. So I'm like, how am I starting afresh? There's all those fears that can attempt to hold you back. But I was just like, you know what? It's time to take to start afresh. And so when the opportunity came for me to say, I'm out, I raised my hand and I was just like, I'm ready. And that's how, after 9.5-ish a little bit more than 9 and 3/4 years, my career at Unilever, should I say ended or came to an end? And what a beautiful, for me, I think I always say the learning is leave the casino when you're winning, right? What an example to be given by a Muslim. Leave the casino when you. So for me, I left when I was winning. So it's such a pride moment for me. Ideal scenario, I was supposed to leave in June, but I negotiated to leave in March so that some of the things like this can kick off. Such an exciting journey. And what a beautiful experience it has been for me. And now, literally, after all these years, I've put all these thoughts, and I'm sure I've forgotten some of the lessons that I wanted to share today. I had written it down on a book, but I was just like, you know what? Let me just go with what comes up from my heart. I hope you will learn from what I went through, from my journey, and you will realize that, first of all, you're not the only one going through some of those things in organization, and you don't need to be the one that makes mistakes. Sometimes you can just learn from other people's mistakes. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope if you have any other conversations that you actually want us to talk about in this channel, please leave your comments down below. And thank you for joining me. You had it here first. Bye.